the first time since my review of Acoustic Girls Magical Movie Night, I'm gonna be reviewing multiple episodes in one video, since that those episodes are connected to each other. Granted, this isn't like what I did in 2017 with Acoustic Girls, but at the same time, since that these three episodes are putting the focus on Raimundo and the fact that he wasn't a Xiaolin apprentice during that time, I really think that adding these three episodes together into one video is the best choice for me. And besides, I want to do so many different things for Summerpalooza, and this one is one of them. This is my review of Xiaolin Showdown Evil Raimundo Trilogy. The first episode, The Flash, the second episode, Days Past, and the third episode, Citadel of Doom, if I did pronounce that right. This episode starts off right after the Mama John episode. Well, Muya is completely having no one to help her on trying to take over the world while also getting Xiaolin Shangang Wu. However, when she actually gets back to Jack Spicer, he rejects her, mainly the fact that he really didn't like that she completely left him over using Mama John. And that really goes to show on how Jack Spicer is probably one of the most underrated villains in this season. We're still in the first season, while the next two episodes are from the second season. But at the same time, I just really think that if Wuya never completely rejected Jack, none of this would have never happened. But that's what makes this episode really interesting, and when we continue on with the next two episodes, you'll understand why. And with Omi, Kimiko, and Clay with their Xiaolin apprentices rankings, they can able to use different they can use their Shinkan Wu with better abilities. However, for Raimundo, considering the fact that he didn't got promoted to be a Xiaolin apprentice, he decides to leave. And keep this in mind, the outfit that he's wearing throughout the first season, he's going to wear that for the rest of this episode and in the next two episodes. With Wuya having no one to be with, she decides to put her attention on Raimundo. In case if you didn't see the last episode's ending, Wuya actually says that there's a path that she can follow that can actually lead her to another way to take over the world. And that pathway is Raimundo. However, Raimundo doesn't accept Wuya's offer, but he is still thinking about it. When he completely heads back to the Xiaolin Temple, another Shinkan Wu has been revealed, and that's the reversing meal. After beating Jack Spicer in the Xiaolin Showdown, Raimundo decides to go to the Xiaolin side because he's getting sick of being in the Xiaolin side. Really goes to show how much of his character was in the first season, as the other characters are really depressed and shocked that this happened. And this is where I'm going to stop talking about the story. Since that you're probably aware that Raimundo is part of the Xiaolin side in this episode and the following two episodes, I really think that his development is a lot more different, since that he tried to do his own thing in the last episode, but since that he wasn't promoted because it ended up backfiring, I really understand onto why he would easily leave the Xiaolin Temple and be part of the Xiaolin side. Because as far as I'm concerned, for anyone who's completely new to a subject or a martial arts thing and just try to do the right thing while also be good in front of their bosses and judges, is obviously a difficult task that people will always go through if they are like Raimundo, that is. And when it comes to the other characters completely depressed that Raimundo is no longer with them, really goes to show how depressed they are, especially that they don't even know what Raimundo is going to do with Wuya, since that they don't know what Wuya's motivation is. Let's go talk about the reversing meal. The reversing meal is one of the most powerful Shinkan Wu because it can reverse someone else's attacks. And that's not even what the reversing meal can do. Considering of what it can actually do for this episode's plot and what leads to the next two episodes, really makes you appreciate what the writers have to do for each Shingon Wu. The reversing meal can easily make this episode a lot more shocking once you see the ending of this episode, but I'm gonna get to that eventually. What Wuya needs something from the reversing meal is to get the serpent's tail so that she can actually turn to flesh, and I'm not kidding. The fusions of two Shingon Wu combining each other is obviously not a bad thing, and since that Raimundo escapes and completely shows Wuya that he has the serpent's tail, you can really tell that with this episode's title, In the Flesh, you know what's gonna come at the end of this episode. I would easily say that if Jack Spicer actually did help Wuya on this, then his plan on ruling the world might be complete. But considering the fact that Wuya and Jack Spicer, despite being a cool duo, are not really in good terms, really goes to show onto why we completely see how Jack Spicer is acting in the later seasons now, despite the fact that he is still good at what he's doing right now. If we actually think that having him actually taking over the world will probably make this trilogy mainly about him, and the fact that of what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes won't probably be a good idea. So I actually think that having Raimundo being the main focus of this episode and the following 2 really works, and I honestly think that that's probably one of the reasons onto why people relate Raimundo more than the other characters. Before I get to the ending of this episode, let's go talk about the Xiaolin showdown between Raimundo and Jack Spicer. The showdown is when someone gets caught in the light, which is the searchlight of the tower, they will easily lose the showdown. I honestly think that this is one of those Xiaolin showdowns that are really good involving Raimundo, and how the fact that he even said, I should have picked a different showdown, really makes you actually think that he's just trying to do something good, but for himself. And for himself is just basically gaining fame and nothing really important, and that's friendship. But that's something that he'll learn in the next episode, and in the following episode after that. All I can say is that this showdown, despite the music not being good as the other showdowns, is still really entertaining, and I actually think that these type of showdowns really work in order to have this episode continuing on with the development of Raimundo. But anyway, enough of that, let's get into the ending of this episode. The Xiaolin monks made it just in time before Raimundo and Wuya completely uses the serpent's tail and reversing meal together. They completely make fun of Raimundo by having the serpent's tail away from him, but Raimundo has enough. With the golden tiger claws in his possession, he completely grabs the serpent's tail and then uses it, while Wuya uses the reversing meal. And with that, everything around them is like the darkness that Wuya was in while taking over. And I gotta say, the next 2 episodes will really show how powerful Wuya really is as a Xiaolin witch. Because this image at the very end of this will make you question what the following episode, Days Past, is going to be like after the events of this episode. Before any of you ask, at the very end of this review, I'm going to rate the 3 episodes. Don't worry, this isn't a 1-2 part thing when it comes to episode titles. With an episode title as an original title card, I would give it a rating as its own. So don't be concerned, I will show you the ratings at the very end of this video. Anyway, let's get into the next episode, Days Past. With Wuya completely in the human body, is very, very invincible. And it really goes to show that in the 3rd season of the show, they completely toned down her abilities. Because let's just say, her abilities as a Xiaolin witch is just unbelievable. No matter what Shingon Wu the main characters use against her, Wuya is completely over them, since now that she's a Xiaolin witch and no longer a spirit. And with her powers, she completely rises rock creatures from the ground, and they're her bodyguards. And consider the amount of rocks, this leads to a huge disadvantage of the main characters. And this also leads to another disadvantage involving Jack, since that he also has no other way to stop Wuya from taking over the world, because his way of saving the main characters is because he wants to rule the world, but Wuya is ruling it. It's actually kind of humorous when you actually think about it, but when you have two villains completely on separate sides, you can really tell that they cannot join sides, because even if they did that before, and even if they didn't do it, they would still get their own way regardless and go against each other. Without any way to stop Wuya and her healing witch powers, the only option that they can do is talk to Grandmaster Dashi, who was the one who completely took down Wuya in the past. However, they need a time machine, to which Jack Spicer has one in his basement. I would say this is plot convenience, but since that Jack Spicer is a genius and he wants to figure out some other ways to actually take over the world, I honestly have no complaints here. However, the biggest issue involving Jack Spicer's invention is the fact that he needs more power to generate more than 2 seconds. Otherwise, he won't be able to send back anyone so many years in the past. So in order to resolve the situation, they completely have him use the Eye of Dashi, since that it has a limited supply of energy, and Omi decides to go solo while the other characters face off Wuya and her minions. And believe me, this episode, despite not being mostly about Raimundo, which I'll get to later, is still really important regarding to Raimundo's character and how it's really affected him for the following episode. After getting teleported so many years in the past, where the Xiaolin temple isn't like what it used to be in the present day in this episode's timeline, well, I'm talking about before Omi got into the past, Omi tries to find where Grandmaster Dashi is. And he did found him, but unfortunately, he really just isn't in the mood, and he wants to be basically like everyone else. I would say that this is taking ideas on people just trying to fit in society, but I honestly think this really has nothing to do with that topic, since that Grandmaster Dashi only appears in this episode and the following episode, but not as a main character role. I mean, he does do something useful, but that's besides the point. So anyway, Omi tells Grandmaster Dashi about Wuya in the future, and the only way to actually stop Wuya is to put her in a box, the puzzle box that Jack Spicer opened at the very first episode of this show. I know I'm talking about the briefness of this episode, unlike the last episode, but at the same time, this episode is just basically what happens when Wuya is having full power after completely becoming the healing witch again. And the main characters are completely defenseless to actually stop Wuya and stopping her from taking over the world. And when this leads to Jack Spicer just trying to help, despite the fact that it's obviously that he just wants to do this just for his own benefits, I honestly think that there's probably not a way for this episode to actually have some interesting ideas into it. Even if this episode is mainly about the main characters going to the past, well, only Omi going to the past, this still leads to a reasons onto why this episode is mainly important involving Raimundo's character development. In the last episode, after completely succeeding Wuya's goal and actually making her completely flesh again, I honestly think that his motivations in this episode aren't really anything to actually consider him being a main focus in this episode. But at the same time, what he does in this episode really goes to show that he had completed his goal and got everything he wanted from Wuya. After completely turning her into human, Wuya gave him a room with so many video games to play, but eventually he gets burned out. Yeah, Raimundo completely played every video game in his new room, and he's completely tired because no friends are around him so that he can have the fun and experience from others, which is probably one of the reasons onto why the following episode will work for Raimundo's redemption. Because as far as I'm concerned, Ruya in this episode, even after taking over the world, completely has everything under control since that she's in control. The fact that Hailing Witches are really invincible and is invulnerable to anything really goes to show that Ruya is just trying to get Rai into his side so that she can get what she wants by giving him what he wants. Because in the very first episode, she did the same thing with Jack Spicer, and in the Mama John episode where she rejected Jack and tried to win him back in the last episode, it failed because Jack Spicer was just too smart to fall for that. But I also talked about Jack Spicer, about how he looks like in the later episodes, so the less said the better. And then when Raimundo completely wants Ruya to play with him in order to have some kind of occupation with some kind of friends, she can't because she's completely busy taking over the world. So instead, she allows her walk minions or creatures to keep him occupied. I would say that this is mostly something that she's just trying to do what's right for Raimundo for her own ways, but at the same time, this just leads to more of a reasons onto why Raimundo is starting to become a good guy again in the following episode. If there's one thing I didn't point out in the flesh portion of this review, is the fact that I didn't talk about a lot about Clay, Omi, and Kimiko, and mostly Dojo. Well, the reason is that they're completely shocked that Raimundo is no longer with them and is part of the Hailing side. They really have nothing else to contribute in the Flesh episode because they just completely accomplished their goal on becoming Xiaolin apprentices. And just seeing Raimundo being the only non-apprentice really goes to show on they just want to actually make Raimundo feel better, despite the fact that this only led him to hang back to his hometown in Brazil. And when we actually get to this episode, they're really in the situation where they had to figure out some other alternatives in order to stop Ruya, since that Raimundo completely put her in a position that she wasn't in the beginning of the show. And when they have no other choice other than completely surrendering, which is the last thing they should do, the last thing that they can do, they decide to offer Jack Spicer to use his time machine, which is literally the only option. And this was before the Sands of Time was revealed. That Shingon Wu revealed in season 2. And I'm going to get more on that later in this portion of this review. And the reasons onto why Omi is going solo in this is because, like I said, he wants to make sure that everyone is okay while they can able to defend themselves when Ruya's forces completely seize them and capture them. Granted that he said that he was hoping that Grandmaster Dashi would guide him to stop Ruya, which he did, but at the same time, he wouldn't bother going into the future while also going back to the past or where he belongs. Because in the following episode, Jack Spicer's time machine is completely broken. So I honestly think that what we're going to see in this episode at the end involving Grandmaster Dashi and Omi will probably be understandable. Anyway, getting back to the story, there is a Xiaolin Showdown in this episode, but it's not really for Shingon Wu whatsoever. It's just basically Omi trying to get a pebble from Grandmaster Dashi. That's really all there is to it. In the Xiaolin Showdown itself, it's just mainly Omi just trying to catch Dashi while trying to completely go through this maze and confusing courses. Yeah, I really think that this Xiaolin is good, but considering the fact that it's only here just so that we can actually see some kind of action in this episode, it's mostly debatable if this Xiaolin was good or not. But we actually get to see on how impressive Grandmaster Dashi is. Getting back to him, I honestly think that he's mostly helpful for what he actually goes through during his times facing off the Xiaolin side during his time in the past. And considering the fact that he's been voiced by Tom Kenny, I really have to say that Tom Kenny really does a really amazing job voicing other characters other than SpongeBob, especially that he's also the voice actor of Raimundo in the show. And the fact that he actually had only won the showdown is mostly humorous, and the fact that that Xiaolin showdown wasn't really anything worth fighting for, despite the fact that Omi needs the pebble from him in order to stop Ruya. And when Dashi completely turned the pebble into a puzzle box, which is the same one Jack Spicer used at the beginning of the show, I can really tell you that this is going to lead to the same results in the following episodes. Now, with everything Omi has with the puzzle box in his possession, he decides to head back to the past, which he can't be able to do because he doesn't know how to, which leads to the next episode, Citadel of Doom. As it turns out, Jack Spicer has no other idea to bring Omi back from the past because he really didn't do a lot of developing his time machine whatsoever, which means that Omi is trapped in the past forever, which leads to a major disadvantage with the main characters. And to make things worse, one of Ruya's rock creatures completely destroyed the time machine, which leads to a very hilarious reaction from Jack Spicer. I'm really serious. Even when I watch this longer, it doesn't even look really juvenile the more I think about it. I'm really serious. If some people say that this is an error in this episode and they say that the writers just completely put it in for the sake of comedy, I honestly don't think that's really the case. They really wanted to make Jack Spicer really humorous, even in that it went a little too far later in the show. Unfortunately, they have to surrender because there is a giant rock creature that is way bigger than the other rock creatures that we've seen in the last episode. See how dangerous Ruya really is? Well, now you completely understand onto why you shouldn't mess with Ruya when she's in the flesh. Meanwhile, back in his castle or kingdom or something, Raimundo tries to play some of the games with one of the rock creatures, but it's not working out whatsoever, especially that the rock creatures aren't really smart. And as with the other characters completely in their cell walls, well, mostly, this leads to one of the most surprising things that I don't think anyone will probably see coming from the show once they saw it for the first time. Omi is back. Yeah. I'm not kidding, he actually came back. He managed to free his friends, which leads to his story onto how he actually came back from the past. And probably one of the most unbelievable things that any other main character who is a hero, or a Shaolin monk in this case, would ever do. He says that he had to wait for 1500 years in order to get back to the past. And the fact that he hasn't gotten older, he actually figured out a way to actually get back to the past without getting older. And the people are his friends are completely in disbelief onto how he managed to do it. The reasons onto why is because the only Shingon rule that he brought along is the Alpha Tanabe, which you have to understand that is his favorite Shingon rule. And it's also another way that it doesn't make someone really older if they're in frozen ice for such a long time. I don't know if this actually happens in the real world, but if it actually does, I would probably be thankful if we actually are able to have people stay longer than 100 years in order to live life longer, despite missing the majority of what happened during their time under the inside of a block of ice and stuff like that. So anyway, after that amount of years, which leads to centuries, more than centuries, Ruya raised her kingdom, and this actually made Omi break his block of ice in order to get back to his original timeline. That is the reaction of what people actually think, whether they completely see that Omi actually did all of this on his own, and the fact that he actually needed the autonomy. And if you really don't believe me, here's what days past showed, where we actually get to see Omi in the block of ice before the other Omi leaves with the other characters, while Ruya completely raises her kingdom. I honestly don't know what would have been like when we actually see Omi during this time, when it comes to him being in the block of ice after so many years, but considering this show really tries so many ways to actually make Omi a lot more intelligent, despite the fact that in the later series it's mostly debatable on his character development, I honestly think that this episode is just trying to have a really shocking moment between Omi and his friends. But then again, his goal and his friend's goal is just to put Ruya in the puzzle box, which he actually brought along during those many centuries ago. So the goal is to have a distraction on the rock creature so that it will give Jack and Omi so much time in order to put Ruya in the puzzle box. But as it turns out, despite the distraction Kimiko and Clay Dojo are trying to do to Raimundo and the rock creatures, Omi and Jack can't be able to open the puzzle box whatsoever, because it's really shut and it's really different from the other puzzle box from before. And this also leads to them getting caught in front of Ruya. And the strategy didn't work out since that Kimiko, Clay, and Dojo have been captured, while also Omi and Jack are captured from Ruya. And the fact that they completely failed on completely putting her in the puzzle box. And this is where I'm going to stop talking about the story yet again. I honestly think that this episode is considered one of the best episodes from some people. I actually really agree with them because we actually get to see so many amazing things going on. I've already mentioned the Omi coming back from the past thing. So let's go talk about the main plot involving the other characters in Raimundo. Since they're completely captured and unable to stop Ruya, they are really loyal to the Xiaolin Temple no matter what. And they refuse to be part of the Xiaolin side, because they completely are against Raimundo for being part of the Xiaolin side, and blames him for the fact that Omi got into the past in the first place, because they have no other option to do. And when Raimundo completely wants his friends to be part of the Xiaolin side so that he can have friends, they completely denied, because like I said, they rather be loyalty to the good side instead of the Xiaolin side. And besides, if you were in this situation, it's really obvious that you would never want to go through a decision in order to become a good person or a bad person. Which is why we don't see Clay and Kimiko becoming evil. And no, Sabini controlling Clay in Season 2 does not qualify. And the bit where Kimiko actually turned evil in the third episode when she had a challenge showdown with Ruya. I did found the strategy really good whenever they're just trying to stall time in front of the rock creatures in Raimundo while giving Jack and Omi the time that they need. But considering how powerful Xiaolin Ruya really is, I really can guarantee you that you should probably never ever underestimate her no matter what. Because no matter how much they tried, they cannot take down Ruya whatsoever. Now let's get into Raimundo and the very end of this episode. Okay, not the very, very end, since that also leads to more of Season 2, but you know what I mean. With Raimundo holding the puzzle box, and since he's the only character who can actually open it after what he's been through, Dashi completely comes out and completely destroys Ruya by going through her soul, making her a spirit yet again, which leads to the world getting back together like it used to be. After Raimundo got his redemption back, Master Fun decides to promote him as an apprentice, but Raimundo said that he isn't ready, just like what Fun said in the Mama John episode. And I have to say, this really actually improves Raimundo's character so much. If you really think that this episode is just going to end off with Raimundo becoming an apprentice after what he caused, will probably make this episode not a lot better than what people make it out to be. So this actually leads to the remainder, the first beginning episodes of Season 2, where he actually becomes an apprentice. And I really think that that's probably the best choice that Raimundo can do regarding to of what he did, and he's going to do whatever it takes to make things right. And that is when he has a Showdown with Panda Baba and Jack Spicer in a few episodes after this. As much as I really think that this episode is one of the best from the show, the ending is really obvious that not only this is the beginning of Season 2, but the fact that this show is going to continue nonetheless. But if we actually did see some episodes was just mainly the Shaolin monks facing off Jack Spicer, which does happen somewhere in Season 2, it just feels really weird since that everything is just back to normal. And at the very end of this episode, my major gripe with it is the fact that Ruya isn't really trapped in the puzzle box, because Cat Nappe, one of the side villains of this show, only made a cameo in this and returned in the next episode but never came back afterwards. And it acts like in the next episode acts like this episode, along with the last two, never really happened. I understand that we need to have more situations going on in later episodes, but if you're going to literally have a side villain just completely return and just only doing one thing just to have this show continuing on with Ruya again, I honestly do not buy it. But at the same time, this major gripe isn't really anything that can make this episode problematic, despite the fact that the following episode kind of made this situations involving In the Flesh to Citadel of Doom mostly pointless, other than just seeing that Ruya as a Xiaolin witch. But other than that, I really enjoyed these 3 episodes and how it completely gave Raimundo much more development, especially his redemption that he did by stealing Ruya back into the puzzle box, which is a really great improvement over than completely becoming a villain in the Xiaolin side, despite what I said earlier. But it still really is one of those things that no other people would usually do if they're in this situation. And this is one of the reasons onto why Raimundo is one of the most relatable characters from the show in any other cartoon. His fame that he's been wanting from so long, and the fact that it actually reaches to the point that he wants friends instead of just fame for the most. I honestly think that he really has grown as a character, and the fact that in later seasons he's become way more improved, which is why he became a Shoku warrior and the leader at the end of the show. If this show actually did have a 4th season, we will probably see more development of him while also becoming the leader, and the fact that how Omi would behave in that possible season, which would sadly never happen, and instead we got Shaolin Chronicles, which is mostly a reboot, which I don't think it's a good idea, but I'll go and talk about that when I get to it. But other than that, I really enjoyed this episode, and it's the better out of the 3 episodes I reviewed from this special video for any Shaolin Showdown fan. So the ratings that I'm giving on each episode are going to be on the screen, don't worry about that. And I am going to talk about Shaolin Showdown again, just because I talked about the arc involving Raimundo becoming a villain, doesn't mean I'm completely done talking about this show and what they can do and what it can do for the other characters in general, because like every other cartoon I reviewed, this is only the beginning. And I'll see you guys more with Summer Palooza 2 videos for this month of July.